Jordy Culotta Show. Wave your hand out there, baby!
Shout out to the show.
She puts the pinky into the nostril. Man, look at that.
Healthy competition, there's nothing like it.
Y'all grow up.
The line's wrapped around the stadium.
Different strengths. I just lost a tooth.
It's going to be fun.
You know, we might have a story.
I love what you're doing.
Bergeron wants to take us fishing this afternoon.
Sharif, you play for the bad boys of the SEC, man. We don't apologize to anybody.
A lot of people are saying you're going to be wearing number 7.
I don't really know. I want to.
He look crazy, Bill.
Good feet on the old man.
Definitely come back.
We'll be right back with the Jordy Culotta Show. Welcome in. Tuesday edition of the Jordy Culotta Show, early edition. Appreciate you starting your day here with us. Remember, hit the like button, share button, comment button. SEC Media Day recap before we get out of here about 7:50 this morning. Got a roll 8 a.m. meeting for this Tuesday. So appreciate you starting early with us. LSU featured in day one. Remember, daily we're brought to you by RMB Builders. Rhett Bourgeois and the crew online at rmb-builders.com. New house, custom design house, remodel, whatever you're looking for, construction, get in touch with RMB, rmb-builders.com. You can also hit them on Instagram at RMB Builders. And also, our phone line is brought to you by Southern Regional Medical Center. Was over there yesterday chopping it up with the crew. Good to see Ramazan, BJ, and Charles Harvey. Everybody over at Metropolitan Health, over at Southern Regional Medical Center, formerly Metropolitan Health Group. Same services, same great people. Get in touch with them over at Southern Regional Medical Center with the crew. All right, day one, LSU featured. Real quick, Greg Sankey had some comments yesterday, and notably, I think we were all talking that there were some headline things that he was going to really mention. First off, next year's SEC Media Day is going to be in Dallas, as the conference is going to go west here. And one of the things that the SEC has really taken in, and is, in my opinion, I think is very smart, is taking some of their landmark, kind of notable get-togethers and making them events, right? Where they're starting to travel, whether it's SEC Media Days. We've seen the basketball tournament move a couple of times. I know that the football tournament is locked. The football championship is locked into Atlanta and has always been a great host city. But now traveling and bringing the brand around not only the conference, but now going into new territory like Dallas next season will be really cool to see the SEC as they'll welcome in Texas and Oklahoma. So obviously it'll have a little bit of a Western type of feel to it with the two new teams. But yesterday, outside of that was in his opening statement that they were going to move the media days next season in Dallas, and you'll probably see this thing kind of start to travel. I'd imagine that New Orleans is probably on the list at some point to host this event down the line. But then he started to talk a little bit about NIL, gambling, and what he thinks really needs to happen there. And it was interesting to hear his comments on NIL. He thinks that this should be congressionally legislated. He thinks that this should be something that Congress takes in and goes to legislation with. Sankey spent some time on Capitol Hill pleading his case to the legislature about how the NIL right now, that NIL is, really kind of like the Wild Wild West. You can't really wrangle it. Nobody can really put their thumb on it and keep it in line. So Sankey was very much opposed to the states running NIL from an isolated standpoint, and really looked for Congress to take that over, really kind of nudging and hoping that Congress will take that over, to the complete opposite tone when talking about gaming. Said that gaming should be a state-run, kind of that's how it should be governed when talking about, just kind of sports gambling, and which is a growing topic within, obviously, the legalization of sports gaming within states now. I mean, it's not just Nevada. It's all over the place. So
Cincinnati.
Some interesting, yeah, right. I mean, and look, I think that's what some of his comments were directed towards was kind of Bohannon. Where he's talking about they had some situations that really brought a negative light to gambling in sports, and it happened in the league. And without calling names and without pointing fingers, I mean, put the puzzle pieces together, and you got, Bohannon in the LSU dugout sending text messages and calls to a Cincinnati betting window, looking to drop a couple of 100,000 on the Tigers because he's benching his ace. It's a wild,
now he's
crazy,
on campus.
nuts story, man. I mean, it's just, and you can tell. I mean, like from Sankey's seat, you can't have that. You know what I mean?
Look, boys,
it just can't. This can't happen.
What's rampant in the NFL as well? Like you keep seeing people get popped with the gambling in NFL locker rooms, whether it be on NFL
it's too
or
easy
whatever.
to gamble.
Exactly.
Back in the day, it was almost like you were like a drug addict.
Yeah.
You know, they kind of like sneak around the corner.
Yeah, to have
and
paper in your
somebody,
hand.
kind of like, hey man, I need 35 on the right. You know what I mean? Like just kind of like
Licking the pencil
huddled in the corner.
on the payphone.
Right, exactly. Got another dime, man. But I mean, now, you're like click, click, click. Hey, look.
What are you doing?
I got Burrow for the MVP this season.
Yeah. Hey,
You know what I mean?
Joe Burr, you hear that?
You're suspended.
Oh.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's just. I think it's
If
just
there's parlay hits, I might get paid more.
the ease of access, right? I mean, it's very simple to place a bet. As for LSU, LSU, I thought, came off fantastic, right? I mean, like we said, all three guys. Jaden Daniels was featured on SportsCenter yesterday morning. Mekhi Wingo was all over the place. Saw Josh Williams. Josh Williams' suit was slick. I mean, how about that inner lining with the LSU
Aye.
executive? Kind of the was able to get that done for him for SEC Media Days exclusively. So I mean, that was cool to see. And then obviously the message for Brian Kelly. I thought Brian Kelly handled the main room well. He's very good at that. I mean, from the ability to just own the room, to really spend time, and a lot of that is word soup, right? Like, I mean, a lot of coaches go up there with the intent to say nothing for 15 minutes, right? Like, I mean, Jimbo Fisher yesterday, in comparison to what Brian Kelly said, I mean, Jimbo Fisher is the modern day Les Miles to me. The cannonball, not the bullet, the cannonball that LSU dodged by missing on Jimbo Fisher. What is that now? 8 years ago?
2015.
Yeah.
8 years ago? Cannot be understated. Like, really. I mean, I doubt that LSU would have gotten locked into a 10-year contract with Jimbo Fisher. I just don't think that Joe Oliva is forward-thinking enough to see that. Thank God. But, I mean, taking you back to 2015, and I know we've done this exercise before. I mean, that deal was sealed. I mean, it was done until the governor picked up the phone and blew it up. And the ability now to look back on that and see just the mess that LSU would have continued to have been in if Jimbo was here. The game has passed Jimbo by. And I say that with all due respect. Like, I mean, who the hell am I? I mean, I've never even been a part of the game to even have it, in my grasp presently. I've just been able to enjoy the game through, the mind and the creativity of a guy like Jimbo Fisher. Right? I mean, when I fell in love with football was probably around the time when I was that age of watching his offense and Rohan and Michael Clayton and Josh Reed and Dominic Davis and LeBrandon Toefield and Robert Royal. I mean, just like all these cats just lighting up the scoreboard in a day where offensive football was it wasn't really a thing at LSU. I mean, LSU was notorious for winning defensively and winning ugly. And Jimbo and Rohan and that crew came in here and started to Jamarcus Russell, Dwayne Bowe, Craig Davis.
5 wide.
I mean, just fireworks. And it feels like he's still living in that era. I mean, I was quasi-joking yesterday morning saying that they were going to have an issue with Petrino and Jimbo and who's going to be the play caller. Jimbo went to SEC Media Days and just threw fuel on the fire. of who's going to be the play caller in College Station next year. Well, we've kicked it around a little bit. Yeah, that's good to hear. I mean, because the season's about 6 weeks away, man. If they don't know who's calling the plays
Now?
in mid-July, you believe they're going to be confident on who the play caller is in mid-October? In late November? I mean, this is setting up to be a disaster on offense for A&M. I mean, Jimbo's, I'm still up in the offensive room. I go into the defensive room too. Like, oh my God. I mean, that is some Les Miles stuff. Like, stay in your lane, man. Recognize and have some awareness about your program. Your seat might be the hottest in the country, and your buyout is $72 million. Like, the fact that they're even talking about firing you is crazy. And to not have the recognition and to not have just the wherewithal to at least fake it at SEC Media Days. Right? Like, don't go into the public and, it was like LSU and Ogeron. Like, don't tell the public you didn't interview Bo Pelini. Well, I didn't. Well, don't tell them. I mean, like, you don't have to say everything. Like a month ago, the Texas A&M Sports Information Department didn't get with Jimbo and say, okay, look, man, we're day one SEC Media Day. They're going to have questions, obviously, about you and Bobby Petrino. What's the situation? Well, we don't know who's going to call the plays yet. All right, well, let's not say that. Let's not say that. Let's have a canned answer of how we're going to approach this, right? I mean, like, these are going to be like the 5 most frequently asked questions to A&M. I mean, if you're doing this exercise with LSU, you've got an idea of what the 5 most frequently asked questions are going to be. So you got your guys and you got Brian Kelly well equipped for, hey, look, you're probably going to be hit with, what's the deal with the quarterback situation with Nussmeier and Daniels? I mean, it sounded, the answer he gave yesterday to that sounded a lot like the answer he gave us a month ago when we sat down with him at LSU Ops. It sounded like the same answer he gave Jacques, who sat down with him a week before we did at Ops. He's prepared for that question, right? Like he's got some sense to him and knows this is probably something they want to talk about. So let me be prepared and have at least a go-to line on how I'm going to handle this. Jimbo looked as if that was the first time he heard that question.
LSU was so prepared, they put it on, it was part of their social media with Tommy Karam. They publicized how they prepare for the SEC Media Days between the players and the staff, and here's the questions you're going to get asked. Here's how you should answer them. They went through the whole gambit of playing Florida State again, all of the things that you would expect people are going to ask. Like Jaden Daniels was in there getting asked about the quarterback situation. This is how you answer it. This is how you handle it. Don't say this, say that. Like, that's what LSU PR does. And for Florida State to be in there and go, let's turn Jimbo loose. Like, that has to be one of the wildest experiences of your life if you're a Texas A&M SID where you're like, I don't know what he's going to. I mean, LSU was in that position before.
Sure.
And now it's that same feeling. You're like, they're wringing their hands whenever he's on the podium. Like, I don't know what he's going to do.
I would be a nervous wreck.
Because in the same vein, you talk about the buyout, he also knows about the buyout.
Sure.
They're not going to fire me.
I mean, the leverage that he has.
He owns the program.
You that, right? Like that. Like, in itself, on face, you make a change at your top position in your organization. If you're the head coach, your offensive and defensive coordinator are your top lieutenants, right? So
the cabinet.
That's as important of a decision as you'll make in the program. And in one day a year, the league and the country media who cover sports and college football have access to you, and on that day you go with an answer of, yeah, we don't know who's going to be the play caller yet. We've kicked it around. Like,
The one thing you couldn't say.
bro, it's 6 weeks away. Like, I mean,
When's install?
it's so reminiscent of Les Miles, because Les Miles was the same way in the sense of he would go to media days and he was so arrogant.
Mm-hmm.
He was so out of touch that when people would ask him, like, hey man, what's up with your quarterbacks? Like, why don't you have? He would like start telling you about his family vacations, where they just had this job security, where it was almost insubordinate. I mean, like, really, like, I mean, I don't mean to, like, but I mean, it's like, holy cow! When I saw, just, it's almost even like the demeanor, right? And it's so opposite now to see LSU as the buttoned up professional approach,
Never nervous.
and comes off really clean every time. Really, I mean, like, Brian Kelly now has been on the job for over a year, and I cannot think of one time where in the public you thought, wow, they're going to step in it, or they stepped in it. And look, when you're in charge of an operation of a Fortune 500 company like LSU football is, and as much spotlight and time that you get in the public and in the media, sometimes it just happens, right? Like, you can try to avoid it as much as possible, but it's just what it is. You know, I mean, sometimes it's going to happen. So for LSU standpoint, that has been as impressive as what has gone on the field. And then when you hear Brian Kelly speak about how they get there, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, yesterday at the podium, I thought he went more into the depth of the conversation of really how LSU football kind of revitalized itself, re-identified itself under Brian Kelly, right? Where there were things that were happening at practice that we would see as media members that you would just kind of write off as, it's competition, it's football, it's high-level football, it's lots on the line, it's pressure-packed situations, where you would just kind of take, that's how it is. You know what I mean? I've been to pro practices. I've been to college practices. I've seen high-level competitive atmospheres where, people become very emotional. Whether it's, somebody throwing a helmet, somebody hitting a wall, somebody, maybe yelling back and forth at a coach, somebody, just getting into a competitive situation where, each side wants to win, but it's a little bit of behind the curtain of how the sausage is made, and maybe not everybody needs access to that because it gets a little grimy sometimes. Kelly took all that stuff out of LSU, which, I don't think we account for that. Like, I know we haven't talked about it here, but he made a comment in our sit down about a month ago, and then he talked about it more yesterday, that to me is the biggest difference of the LSU football program that nobody says, that nobody talks about, me included, us included here on the show, is just the way they carry themselves now.
It's a total 180.
And look, I probably come from the camp where I've seen that emotion displayed at practice, right? Like, I saw and came up and really had my first taste of highly competitive competition with John Brady's basketball program. And those practices were wild. They were nuts. I mean, it was player-coach back and forth. It was player-player back and forth. It was physical. It was in people's face. It was, a lot of F you. I mean, it was, it wasn't for everybody. I mean, I remember the first couple of times I saw it. I mean, it was just shocking to see. It was the first time I ever saw that type of emotion in a competitive atmosphere, and it was just accepted. Like that would happen, and then it was kind of on to the next sequence of practice. And then, as a young media member, I would go down and cover Saints camp, and I saw some things at Saints camp that was very similar to that. It was Jim Haslett's Saints camps, where Haslett was, he was in players' faces and players right back in his face and players going at it and, people throwing helmets and people, getting emotional over things that
on a Tuesday
that would happen on a practice field. It was just, and then you would see someone like Saban, who came in here and put an emphasis on the way you carry yourself, the way you handle yourself, the way you talk to the media, the way you present yourself, all those little bitty things that we may not recognize and speak publicly about, but if you're looking for it, it's there. And it's very obvious. And I don't know if we've not been looking for it at LSU football, but we certainly have not been talking about it. But it absolutely has taken shape under Brian Kelly. And here in year 2, that seems to be the piece that has really propelled them to the front of the league in the discussion. Right? Because last year at this time, it was about implementing those small little details of squeezing that stuff out. Right? Like Major Burns, I remember, said on this set one time, he was teaching us, we had to learn how to practice. And when you would say, what do you mean? Like running station to station? No, keeping your helmet buckled up a certain time when you can take it off. Never sitting on your helmet, never throwing your helmet, never yelling at a player, never yelling at a coach. Never, the way you just carry yourself out there. And how that really translates and how it translates into how you play. Think about it. You take the emotion out of anything, you're much more calm and focused, right? And not that you strip the emotion out of football. That's impossible to do. But learning how to measure the emotion, control the emotion, use it in the right instances. When it comes out, make sure and channel it here to get the best out of yourself is just one of those little bitty things that coaches, really the high-level coaches, one that LSU football has now, like Brian Kelly, that knows how to take that and use it as a competitive advantage for his team. And then speak so eloquently about it. Right? He could be up there as a politician. He could be up there feeding you lines of BS. If he is, he's doing it very confidently and looks like he knows what he's talking about. But to me, I think he's a pretty genuine face value type guy that's just, he's a solid communicator and he's very confident in what he does. He knows that his formula works. He knows that his teams are going to improve throughout the season and be better at the end of it and should be competing for a championship when they have everything aligned. And this year it seems like they've got all of the right pieces at least set to go into the year. Listening to him talk about Mason Smith and what they expect of him this year is totally going to open up a new almost style that they can run on defense. You could shade the outside last year. You could put your emphasis on B.J. Ojolari and Harold Perkins. You could double those guys up on the outside, and there wasn't that game changer in the middle that could beat one-on-one every single time, or that would demand a double team because you just couldn't solely block him. Mason Smith is now that guy, and listening to Brian Kelly speak about him is really going to allow Matt House to do things defensively that we couldn't see last year from them because they just didn't have the capability. They didn't have the personnel. They were still very productive for what they had. LSU's defense, I thought, was one of the biggest storylines of last season in the way that they competed, in the way that people stepped in and stepped up. But Mason Smith's a whole new dynamic. He'll beat a one-on-one block 7 out of 10 times. You'll have to double team him, which leaves you one-on-one with number 4. Good luck. So, I mean, I thought LSU shined on day one, man. I thought LSU was as good as we thought they were going to be on the podium, on the microphone, and really probably exceeded that.
And it still feels like that they're trying to throw the bait out there for LSU, like waiting for a quote whenever you ask a coach about AI, like artificial intelligence, and you're like, oh, I'm going to get a hit piece here. I'm going to get a quote from the LSU football coach, because if you asked that to Les Miles or Ed Orgeron, what would have come out of their mouth? And then you have Brian Kelly who's like prepared for the question.
Allen Iverson.
Yeah.
I recruited Allen Iverson out of high school.
Georgetown.
Right.
At Newport News, Virginia, hell of a quarterback.
Les
Forget
would
it.
just be like,
I would have put him at DB.
Forget it.
where's my wife?
But you have that's
Or yours.
Yeah. That's the total 180 though, right? Where it feels like LSU used to be go back 2 years whenever it was Ed Orgeron. Look, what was the lower third? Ed Orgeron likes to run shirtless. Like that was the SEC network. Like I know they're having fun. That's fine. But what are you going to say about Brian Kelly? There's nothing to joke about.
Yeah. There's
no fun to be had because he's showing up in his blue suit, and I'm gonna answer your questions. Y'all go talk to Jimbo if you want to quote.
No doubt. I mean, I think and look, I
Or
think
Eli Drinkwitz.
that was part of the emphasis that Scott Woodward was looking for. I don't think Scott Woodward will tell you that. I don't even know if Scott Woodward would write it in the book 25 years from now. But there had to be a piece of him where, LSU was a punchline for over a decade at this thing. I mean, I was there. I mean, you would show up the night before. You would show up on Sunday. All the media members would be downtown at the, downstairs at the bar at the Hoover Hotel. And, the only thing they were talking about is what's Les going to do? What's Les going to say? Like, how goofy is Les going to be this year? It was like, geez, man. I mean, look at LSU. Pumping out first-rounders.
Punchline.
Got pro after pro after pro. And got Bozo Bozo the Hat, as the head coach.
Have a great day.
And even into Orgeron. I mean, like Lloyd said, I mean, to have that had to be when Woodward, as the AD, had to be a low point looking and watching SEC Media Day, thinking this is a great day for the brand to be shown off. And the most notable figure who's representing the program is known for jogging with his shirt off in Florida. You know what I mean? It's like, what are we doing? You got to go get a pro. You got to go get somebody who walks into the room and really you want to start hearing the cameras really start to shudder when somebody walks into the room. I mean, not picking their head up and waiting on some punchline, waiting on some joke to be told around the character. I mean, look, Scott Woodward comes from the school of Nick Saban. Right? Saban was the head coach when Woodward got his first job in collegiate athletics at LSU. That's what he saw. That's who he looks up to. That's what he's trying to emulate. That's what he's seen success behind. When he saw, the punchline that LSU football had become, it was about turning it back into a business It was about turning it back into a company that was run with direction and vision, one that understood the responsibility that comes along with being in charge of the organization. And Brian Kelly is a great fit for that, man. All right, we got some cuts here from Kelly. You got a call sheet on this?
Yeah, it's in the doc.
Lloyd. All right, so Brian Kelly yesterday was at the podium speaking, and this is just a little bit of his opening statement. Just number one.
I hit him with a haymaker off the top. Offense, defense, special teams.
Anytime you're talking about an offense, and I sat here last year, and I would tell you that I had no idea who my 5 starting offensive linemen were going to be. That's an unsettling feeling, no matter where you are as a coach. We know who our 5 are going to be. We think we've got really good depth there. We've developed that offensive line. I think it starts there. I think it starts up front on the offensive line when we're talking about productive offenses week in and week out. Now, you've got to have playmakers. Let's face it. You have guys that have to make big plays because you can't go 3 yards, 4 yards, and win games. You have to score points in any league, and in particular the SEC. So to me, it starts up front, and then guys that can make big plays on the perimeter. Tie that into experience at the quarterback position, and I think you now have the makings of what you need on offense. Defensively, to me, it's been, right down the middle of your defense. Look, I think we all have gone to games. If you can't stop the run, you might as well go back to the concession stand because this is going to be a long day. So you start with being strong up the middle. And that means obviously the defensive tackle play, the middle linebacker play, the safety play, right down the middle of your defense. You have to build it there first and then work outside. To me, that's always been the way I've put together and constructed. And then you need selflessness on your football team to be really good in special teams. You've got to have your best players be part of special teams. It can't be a unit of second and thirds wanting to overachieve and be great. You've got to have your best players being selfless and understand how important it is to be part of special teams. Those would be, in a nutshell, how I would construct and put together offense, defense, and special teams.
More from Brian Kelly yesterday at SEC Media Day. Cut 2, Stewie.
Guessing this is 2. You didn't put 2 on it, but talk about that later.
Well, I think it starts with anytime you're talking about an offense, and I sat here last year, and I would tell you that I had no idea who my 5 starting offensive linemen were going to be. That's an unsettling feeling.
Double up.
It was late.
I got number 3. Cut 3.
Well, I think we had a good plan coming in, and the plan really started with understanding where the air was coming out of the tire. What were our problems? You have to sit back and assess where are our problems, and most of our problems were self-inflicted wounds. We had to clean up the things internally. We had to be more accountable. We had to have better attention to detail on a day-to-day basis. We had to be more committed to our academics. All those things carry over to what you do on the playing field. You're not going to forget your assignment. You're not going to miss out on the things that you're supposed to do in a timely fashion. So I think that's the first thing, and then you got to have your players clearly buy into that, and then hold them to that standard. A consistency of that approach is mandated, and if you don't, I don't think you can get that kind of quick transition.
More from Kelly yesterday. This is him speaking at SEC Media Days as he was going through the car wash along with Jaden Daniels and Mekhi Wingo and Josh Williams.
And I think in year two, you start to work more on the individual and the development of the individual. We were laying down a program, a strength and conditioning program that was something that they weren't used to. And so I think as you get into year two, you become a little bit more focused on some of the workouts as they relate to position groups. Wide receivers, a little bit different than defensive linemen. Quarterbacks, obviously different than defensive backs. So we've been a little bit more targeted there. And then we've been extremely careful with the weather. As you know, we like to train outside. We want to acclimate our players to the outside. But we've been very careful with our runs. So one day a week we have our runs. We've moved those runs to an earlier time to make sure that we don't put our kids in a compromising situation. But you're absolutely right. Year two has definitely been a focused year for us as it relates to making some training adjustments to the particular position groups.
Here's Brian Kelly speaking more from yesterday's SEC Media Day in Nashville.
Well, I think I can tell you what's similar. What's similar is that the calendar has changed so dramatically that it's making it almost a year-round proposition. We hosted official visits through the month of June. That had never been the case. I think we looked at, we're doing close to 44 out of the 52 weeks or 7-day weeks now in terms of our schedule. I think 10 years ago we were somewhere in the 36 range. So the schedule in recruiting has changed so much that it's forced so much more of a commitment in your time, and no one's complaining here. I'm just giving an answer to the question about the month of June now is a balancing act between camps and recruiting. What I think is unique about Louisiana and LSU is the players in state. First of all, there are great players in state, and we have to identify them all and recruit them well. But if we do that, they'll come to LSU. Other schools I've been to, in Notre Dame in particular, I had to go to a particular state and pull the best player out of that state. That's a lot harder than being in Louisiana and being the flagship university. And if you recruit that young man the right way, like you're supposed to, he wants to be a Tiger.
Brian Kelly yesterday in Nashville speaking on the podium. This looks like this is the digital media room that he's in, speaking yesterday.
Yeah, I was asked that question earlier. Look, Alabama and Georgia are the benchmark for what we're looking for. And what is that in particular? It's consistency and performance year in, year out. We did it one time. So we're not in that conversation at this point. So what we're hoping that it catapults us to is a more consistent football program that is competing for championships year in and year out. We don't want any dips in our programs at all. And I think when you look at it from a tangible standpoint, what it did for us is it helps us in recruiting that we don't have to paint a narrative that's not true. In other words, that we can say, look, we're going to compete with Alabama. We're going to be able to beat Alabama. It's not a fantasy, it's a reality. And so there is some tangible evidence there that you can use in recruiting, but the rest of it is really about it giving you momentum for consistency in performance.
I love that part about Brian Kelly, that he doesn't run from that part of the competition. Really, I mean, LSU, not necessarily LSU, everybody in the league has always been almost so nervous to mention the big bad wolf, right? In whether it's been Alabama or now it feels like Georgia's, building their house on the block. LSU has recognized that that's the standard, that's what they're chasing, and that's who they want to play. That's who they want to compete against. And, for a long time, I think Alabama, really beat LSU more mentally than they did on the field. I mean, I think it was so surprising for some people to see how LSU was able to compete in those games and keep it close, maybe even including some of the team members that, it was the mental part within the game that would really kind of it would really kind of cost them. And I think that is something that LSU is also not, they don't really deal with anymore in those games, in those big games, in those situations where mentally they feel like they're supposed to be there. They want to be there. They feel like that's what it's all about. So, that comes from the top. And Brian Kelly has been steadfast on that approach his entire time at LSU. Of that, he signed up to play in the league because he wanted to come play against the best. And he hasn't, really shied away from who the best is. And in beating Alabama last season was a mark on his resume that, didn't ever exist. He's been coaching for over 35 years. So, I mean, it means a lot to him to have these opportunities to play against the best within your own league. So I've always loved that approach from Kelly from the onset. Here's more from Brian Kelly yesterday in Nashville.
Well, we have great alignment. I think you have to start there. Our president, athletic director, Scott Woodward, Kelly's in, our chief officer. I think those things are sometimes missed when you're talking about success of a program. We've got great alignment there. The thing that really, I think, sold me on this position was the resources for the student athletes. We provide our student athletes a championship environment as it relates to nutrition, health care, the ability to receive an education and be supported. All of those things matter when you talk about a successful business or organization, and having the resources, and then being collaborative and cohesive. People ask me all the time about championships at LSU. Kim Mulkey's helping us recruit. Jay's helping us recruit. Those guys are national championship coaches, and they're helping us recruit. So I think that's important as well, that you have a collaborative and cohesive department.
Brian Kelly yesterday speaking with members of the media here. Look, if you're just jumping in, we got started a little early this morning to get some time here. We got to cut out of here a little bit before 8 a.m. For some stuff happening around the shop. So if you missed any of today's show, you can always back it up and start it from the start at 6:30 this morning. Make sure and hit that like button, share button, comment button, as we appreciate you always being here. Remember, daily we're brought to you by Katie's Restaurant. Katie's is located down in Mid-City in New Orleans, heading down to Mid-City in New Orleans today. I'll be down there on a job, and always try to make it down to Katie's when I'm there. I'll reach out to Scott Craig and let him know. But if you're stopping by, tell Scott Craig that you heard it here on the show, if you don't mind, as they're gearing up for football season as well and getting ready for the season down there at Katie's. Always has the great menu items that you know about, whether it's the New Orleans favorites that you choose from, or St. Louis style pizza, the coldest beer that you'll find in town, the great service that you can always count on and rely on from our friends over at Katie's. So check them out. That is katiesinmidcity.com, katiesinmidcity.com. They have a sister restaurant too in Francesca's, which is a sandwich deli located in Lakeview. Check out Francesca's, and you can see all of that online at katiesinmidcity.com. So we heard LSU yesterday, along with Texas A&M and Eli Drinkowitz and Missouri. And as we said, LSU, I thought, really dominated the day, took advantage of the podium and the platform, and really, had the brand on shine yesterday. I thought that the brand came out looking fantastic for LSU. So today it will be the national champs. Georgia is making the trip down. Brock Bowers, who's the top tight end in college football, Cedric Van Pran, the Louisiana native, and starting center, along with Kamari Lassiter, is going to be representing Georgia. Then you will hear from Auburn and Hugh Freeze. Hugh Freeze's first SEC Media Days representing War Eagle as he comes back after a hiatus at his time with Ole Miss.
Not that phone, Hugh.
Yes. Hugh, the burner, for God's sakes.
I just pray to God.
And then Mississippi State. So the two new coaches today, the only two new coaches in the league, with Zach Arnett is going up with Mississippi State, and then Auburn's Hugh Freeze, along with Georgia head coach Kirby Smart, will be the three that we hear from today. And Vanderbilt, 4 head coaches today with Clark Lee. Clark Lee will actually get the day started at 10 o'clock this
Kind
morning.
of a stud.
Yeah,
Clark
he
Lee
is.
just got the extension.
He is.
They finally found somebody at Vanderbilt.
Very impressive. We followed Clark Lee last year, and very impressive.
Fullback?
Got a fullback mentality for sure. Fullback mentality for
The
sure.
real crime is, I mean, obviously rest in peace to Mike Leach, but not having him on the podium. That's just criminal in its own right.
What did he do last year? Like 8 minutes in his open?
Yeah, like you don't even have to ask him a question. He'll just go through the whole ledger by himself.
I'm done.
I don't even know what we talked about.
I'll talk to y'all later. Thank you.
I told you about the quarterbacks. I've already
I
told
got
you.
3 of them. It doesn't matter who plays. Put you in a closet.
But I really and truly, I couldn't get over how bad Jimbo was. And I don't mean to pile on, but it's so reminiscent of Les.
You got some Jimbo?
Got some Jimbo.
Oh, God.
I mean, just
He looks worn out.
1,000 words to say nothing.
Hold up.
That's okay. Jimbo's loading too.
Yeah.
Just refresh it, yeah. The Twitter will get you, Coach, if you leave it up too long. Just refresh the Twitter page, and then it'll come back. Oh, God. Now we're in a whole different Twitter sphere.
But it's alarming to see just the unawareness that Jimbo operates with.
It's like he goes up there with no plan. Like Mike Leach is a funny way to do it, where he trusts himself.
Obviously has no plan.
But Jimbo seems like erratic.
I mean,
His lips shaking.
yeah. I mean, it's as if you see somebody caught in a situation
In a lie.
where they don't know what they're talking about, or they're lying. You know, I mean, we've all seen the kid in the front of the class that's not prepared.
And this is my PowerPoint here.
It
if you
feels
just would
like,
look at what I
it feels
wrote
like
down.
Jimbo every time.
So what's on the PowerPoint?
Yes.
I don't know.
But I did the work.
I mean,
It's
it's
up there.
it's Jamarcus Russell with the film.
I didn't get the $50.
What'd you think about the defense? They look tough.
I got 6 or 7 good plays out of there, Coach. Well, there was no plays on
Nice
that
little three-man
DVD.
front.
Blank film, Jamarcus.
They like to run.
So you don't trust me or what?
Joke's on you, I know. But
Coach, have you ever been in any staff room that doesn't have arguments or disagreements?
Oh, no.
Every coaching staff in America has that argument or disagreement. That's part of it. But no, it's just I'm the boss. We're the boss. We'll do it at the end of the day. But you listen to everybody's opinion. Everybody can voice their opinion. I want guys with opinion. I want guys who have knowledge. I want guys who make me think. I want guys to create different narratives that brought to the table that can help us. I think that's the best thing you have. And I think that's one of the reasons, some of the reasons you hire them, to do different scenarios and different things like that. But as far as that, we all have great respect for each other, and it's been tremendous. We've had great response and haven't had any issues. Guys, Coach, have you ever been in any?
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of fighting going on.
Have you ever spoken out of both sides of your mouth at once? I mean,
that's exactly what football coaches want to do: create narratives.
Yeah.
And he knew it as soon as he said it. He's like, "Oh, I don't want to create a narrative.
I
Oh,
mean,
I just
like-
said we want to create
Yeah, I
narratives."
just created a narrative.
Just word salad. Just let me speak.
Sounds like it's not going great with old Bobby, right? I mean, there's nothing other to take away from that than they're clearly like butting heads.
I mean, it ain't gonna work. I mean,
He just can't let go.
it just,
That's where you get the less comparison of I'm gonna bring in somebody to help me with the offense, but actually at the end of the day, I'm the boss. We're the boss. What does that mean? So who's the boss? Like I'm the boss. We're the boss. Like he forgot to mention him.
it
It's
feels
bad.
like less. It feels like less.
If you're a gambling man, you can go ahead
Like
and
less. It feels so good not to have LSU the butt of these jokes.
Right.
Really. I mean, I'm telling you, for as many years as LSU would go over there and we would go over there and cover the event and have LSU as just the absolute centerpiece of people pointing and laughing of, man. The thing that LSU had, though, was that they were always loaded.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that was the –
Give me to the players.
And A&M kind of has a little bit of that growing. I mean, like, they're putting their defensive line –
Jesus.
I mean, like, is the best they might have the best defensive line in the country. I mean, just as far as the depth goes, I mean, like, they got straight dudes.
No, but you
up
saw
front.
it against LSU.
Yeah,
Like, they can turn it on when they want to. It's just a matter of what's going on in the office at the time.
I'd probably say them or Ohio State, maybe. Like, somebody like that.
Sure.
Georgia. Like,
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, right. Georgia. I mean, but best in the West, for sure.
Or Alabama. I would just imagine that they're not going to be bad. And nobody's talking about their defense because everybody's focused on the quarterback situation, which it feels like it's going to be Ty Simpson.
I agree.
Which,
yeah. That's what I
I mean,
like.
the more and more the days go on, the
Yeah.
more you
Have you
hear
seen him
Simpson.
play?
Yeah. He can throw it, man.
He can't
He's-
do it.
he's-
He's a 5-star.
Yeah.
He's I mean, Alabama gets 5 stars, but it's going to be a little different flavor of Alabama football than what you're used to.
Oh, for sure.
He's Johnny Manziel-esque, where
Yeah.
he'll just going to be at some head scratching turnovers when,
Well,
and
and
I can't wait for Nick
he's
Saban
young, you know.
to grab that headset and let it rip. What are we doing on offense? And you got Bill O'Brien over there. Oh no, not Bill O'Brien. Excuse me. Tommy Reese, who's
Yeah.
might be out over his skis a little bit. And once you have Saban looking at you, it's a whole different field than. I mean, he had Brian Kelly. He kicked him out the door, essentially. Whenever he left, he was like, "Oh, now I finally get to run my offense." And then now you have Nick Saban. Like,
And
yeah,
Kelly wanted him.
yeah, he did try to get him to
I mean,
LSU.
He tried to recruit him to LSU.
But
Yeah, I mean, I am anxious. Saban will be featured tomorrow with Alabama.
oh, it's going to be a State of the Union address.
Oh,
I
for
mean,
sure.
that's Greg Sankey light, where you
Or
just get
Greg Sankey heavy.
Yeah, where you just get this is what the SEC is, boys. Like, there's going to be no questions. 5 minutes, that's all the time you get from me.
All right, Coach Saban's done, guys.
Yeah, everybody shake his hand.
All right, good stuff today. We did have an early edition, so we do have to cut out of here a little early for some of the stuff that we got coming up here this morning. So thanks, everybody, for being here. Make sure and hit that like button, share button, comment button. We'll definitely be back with you tomorrow morning. We got Shay and we got Jacques from Media Day. So we will touch base with both of them tomorrow. Make sure and hit the like and share. We'll be back with you tomorrow. Thanks to RMB Builder building us every day.